Hi, I'm Brad Carpenter. I'm from New York City.
And I'm a Peter Madsen canvas.
I wanted to be tattooed my whole adult life, but I never thought that I found like the right inspiration. I didn't think I had anything momentous enough in my life that I wanted to commemorate it on my flesh. Until eventually I did. I finally got frustrated waiting and did some research and found a tree of life, and that was the beginning of this whole journey. But the journey really started in earnest when I found the tattoo work of Peter Isar Oakmund.
So, I don't know where to start. 9 years of craziness. So, I'm going to try to sum up. We've talked about like the whole thing several times.
Mm-hmm.
We filmed it in its entirety before, and you had Ava take amazing photos. But now it's like it's done.
Yeah.
And it's a whole, but it's a whole consisting of so many small parts. So I wanted to talk about the small parts and put some focus on where it began and where shit got weird. But let's start with the beginning. Your first tattoo.
First tattoo, the Tree of Life.
Yeah.
The Tree of Life had meaning for me. I'm Jewish. I had finally decided to be proactive about having a tattoo after wanting one for years. And I found this beautiful Celtic design, and I had the idea I wanted to have my Hebrew name in the middle of it. And so I brought the design and my Hebrew name to a tattoo artist in the East Village. He tried to modify it to make it a little more original, but it made it more busy, and so it was closer to the original than he probably wanted. And that was the first. And the one thing of note too is that it filled my shoulder nicely. Like I had the idea of working in tandem with the musculature. That was something that at least came in at the beginning.
Yeah, it's a good start. I mean, for first tattoos, I've seen much worse.
Well, we should talk about the neo-tribal tattoo that was on my shoulder and arm.
Yeah,
because it influenced everything.
It has a lot to say.
It has a lot to say.
Yeah.
So I had been attracted to neo-tribal tattoos, and it seemed very fitting that I went to Sacred Tattoo in New York to get this tattoo, and that's when I worked with Gunny. And I had references for him. Here are designs that I like. And this was the first time then to have an artist take what I liked and interpret it. And he created a design. And again, I had an injury in this arm that sort of changed the shape of my bicep. It deformed it a bit. And he created the neo-tribal tattoo around the musculature and even added like a little sort of a visual thing that made the bicep look longer. And I got that tattoo and I was so proud of it. And it was a bigger piece of canvas, shoulder and arm. So it was another step forward. But then when I found you online, I was researching a project, my inkpen project way back then. I Googled sacred armor, sacred tattoo armor, and your site came up. And that one client that I pointed out to you the other day, that
Armor of Worms.
Yes, Armor of Worms. And it was the first time I had seen a large piece on an athletic man, and my jaw dropped. I didn't know that was possible. And I saw all your work, and it was so inspiring. And I'm like, you're in Copenhagen. And I'm like, he's in Copenhagen? How am I going to work with this guy? It never back then would occur to me to get a ticket and go get a tattoo. But then you just happened to have on your site that you were a guest artist at Sacred Tattoo.
Yeah.
The one place in New York that I actually had relationship. And Kevin, the manager there, I called him and I said, please, if you can get me on a waiting list, I just really want to work with him. And so he did. And when it came time to doing the work, I said, I just want a mandala in the back of my back, and I want the design to follow the trapezius. How you do that is totally up to you. And so you did, but at the same time, you had this pre-existing tree of life and this neo-tribal tattoo, and you had to conceptualize how to take those two elements and tie them together.
Yeah, I didn't want to make something that was completely separate.
Right.
And this is like, I remember a session was in my early days in New York when I used to work there a lot, but it was my first, I think it might have been my first trip there, which was why there was a gap in my calendar, because bookings came and went, and I did not have any fame back then, really. So it was very convenient, and yeah, when looking at the pieces you had, I didn't want to make the third piece into something alien on your body. I wanted it to correspond, which has basically been a very, very huge part of this whole journey, has been to tie things in. And props to Gunny for having created amazing neo-tribal. Personally, something I still love to this day is neo-tribals, and it was great to get to work around that in New York, because this is a fun fact, the first tattoo magazine that mentions neo-tribal tattoos was printed in New York in 1982, the year I was born. So it was a bit of a fun journey back to that, to mess around with.
That was also the year I first came to New York.
Really?
1982.
Oh, that's so weird. You were so old.
I am so old. Yeah.
Okay, so you had that, we did the mandala on your back.
Yes. We did the mandala and the trapezius, and it was 2 4-hour sessions. You and Ufi were having your discussions. You were showing it to me bit by bit, and you combined the styles. And what I felt with the back tattoo was it was so beautiful, but I never got to see it. Like I could see it in a picture or if I angled the mirror. So I said, I want to do another tattoo with you, but I want it somewhere where I'll see it every day. My chest. And you got excited by that prospect. And I said, armor me up, maestro. And that was the next exciting proposition, is that my chest, my biggest canvas really is what I felt. And so we did that over the course of a couple different sacred tattoo visits. You did the outline on the chest. You drew in all the outline, and you did a dotted pattern for this, and you did the pattern.
Yeah.
Which the pattern was so detailed. I couldn't even see the pattern in that pattern, and this was dotted, but it was so painful, and I was so adrenalized.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that part.
No, and you said, and you were like, you're gonna have to calm down. Your body is rejecting the ink.
So you are a bleeder. I mean, when talking about your back piece, it's been one of the hardest areas to tattoo on anyone ever. Like high blood pressure, and specifically that area.
Yep.
Today, when we experienced that, when I was tattooing your shoulder blade and you weren't bleeding, and I moved an inch onto a muscle, and then you just started pissing blood. It's like, what is this? It's like, where does this Bermuda Triangle start and end? Why are we? Very strange. But yeah, so you were also bleeding quite a bit on the chest, not as much as on the back.
Well, and I remember what we decided was, you're going to work on this triangle for a while and just see what happens. And you did, and then I calmed down enough that you said, I think we can come back to the chest. And that was actually the first time that I had the concept of, if you resist the pain and you tense up and the fight or flight takes over and you become adrenalized, everything is all flexed, like, oh, I'm being attacked. And I realized I had to breathe and focus. And I think I learned to focus on some little bass line in the music and to place my attention somewhere else. And that's how we got through pulling it up. And so that was that visit, and then you wanted to always get it into a place where it would feel complete. And I was so happy with this big chest tattoo, but this was not colored in and this was not work. So the next 6 months later, you had a visit that I got a couple days with, and you inked in the pattern, and I was amazed that there was a pattern there, that you could see it and bring it out. And then you were like, so now the bands aren't holding up, we're gonna have to solid them in.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, the most painful part of that whole tattoo, we were gonna have to repeat it. And, but we did, and we got through it. And so then it was, so we had the Tree of Life, neo-tribal, the back tattoo that tied together, and the chest.
Big shield on the chest.
And the big shield on the chest. And so the sacred armor began to take shape.
Yeah.
And then the next thing was, on one of your next visits, that you built this Tree of Life.
If you want to film that bit here.
Yeah.
So this here is the old
Right.
Tree of Life, which we then expanded. We basically made another trunk. Instead of that trunk, it's this, and this then became the crown. So now it's just a more expensive neo-tribal tree thing. It works really nicely.
It works
and
great.
It helped dictate shape, just like Gunny's piece on the other arm dictated the shapes that we were working with, which has then continued all along, which I really love.
It was a whole trajectory that just happened because I had those first tattoos, and you had to alter your I think your style then went off in a direction you probably wouldn't have if I was just starting.
It gave me access to something that I really loved, but I'd never got to work much with.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was very timely.
It was.
What did we do then?
So then you said, all right, I'm moving the shop from Copenhagen to Barcelona. I'm not doing New York trips anymore. So if you want to work with me, you're going to have to come to Barcelona. Then it was the idea of, oh, I guess I do have to get a plane ticket to get tattooed. And of course I wanted to work with you in the worst way. It took me about 1.5 years to sort of figure it out with my schedule. I mean, I work on TV shows, and it can't be in the middle of a season of something, and it can't be when I'm prepping the next, it took a bit. And then did the trip to Barcelona, and of course you had this beautiful house outside of Barcelona with a tattoo studio there. And I think I mentioned to you this before, in my mind, I was always seeing the next area, and I called them gauntlets. And that's what I was seeing. I think that was the warrior thing. But to you, that meant sleeves. And
well, yeah, because you had upper arms.
Right.
It felt weirdly segmented otherwise.
Exactly. So we did the whole outside of the sleeve on both sides over the course of those 5 days.
Yeah. So this is where I got to break my pattern, because you already had asymmetrical sleeves.
Yes.
And so one of my nightmares on you was to connect the back to the front.
Yes.
With these.
Yes.
I couldn't, that's some of the hardest that I've had to do at all, was come up with, it's such a small panel, but figuring that out, because that needed to be symmetric in something that was asymmetrical.
Yes.
And when we then started your sleeves, I could take symmetry and throw it out the window and
Yes.
go for balance instead.
Yep.
It made me so fucking happy, because I've done symmetric sleeve on people, sleeves and legs and all that, and it's just, it's fun to challenge myself with it, but it almost seems like a waste of time for a weird thing, because everyone, not everyone, a lot of people asks me for symmetry, but what they're actually wanting is balance.
Yes.
Because they want to have different things to look at. So if you can obtain balance instead of symmetry, then ta-da, it's a massive win, and so much easier for me. It's in principle cheaper for the client, because they have to spend less time of me drawing, like mirroring things on their body, on something that is, by the way, asymmetric, because humans are never symmetric. So yeah, okay. We went down the path of sleeves.
Path of sleeves.
Patterns.
That I think was the first Barcelona trip. And then the next Barcelona trip was a combination of the inner sleeves on both of those. And I think that's when we added the neck piece.
Yeah.
Because I wore V-neck shirts, and I always hated that the tattoo was kind of neither here nor there. I wanted to show more. And so this neck piece that you beautifully created sort of topped up the armor there. And then we did these inner sleeves.
Did we do the back of your neck at the same time that we did the...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because then it had to do with something that will be seen. I didn't want it to stop even at the line of the
It seemed like
shirt.
something that was slightly hidden,
Yes.
unintentionally.
Yes, so I wanted it to come up, and again, like armor, you're protecting the back of your neck, to have it come up the back of the neck. So we did all of that, neck piece, up the back of the neck, inner sleeves. Well, and actually, I guess the neo-tribal, that was the first Barcelona trip when you were trying to integrate the sleeve into the neo-tribal.
Yeah.
And then you realized that just
Nightmare.
wasn't possible. And you showed me, you went to the computer to have a think about it, and then you showed me the result, and it was a blackout and this white swirl pattern, which is pretty much what you did. And I just went, because I love that tattoo. And then the gears are turning, and it did take me maybe 5 minutes to go, oh.
Yeah, I thought it was going to take you like 6 months.
But and then even better, the closer was you go, I could make that happen, because you knew that you had somebody at the shop the next day. So that was a day 6 after a 5-day week.
And we wrote poor Pucketh into helping me out.
We got Pocket to help, and he was delightful and such a beautiful artist.
He's
and
absolutely amazing.
yeah, and his stuff is amazing and truly transformative geometric work. But his task was to just do the blackout.
Yeah.
But that moment when that blackout happened, I'm a Peter Madsen canvas. It's like suddenly it was all you and your creative impulse. You had integrated this so beautifully. That was covered up, and it was a very powerful, black.
Fucking bold statement.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And we did that nice shoot in Barcelona.
On the street where someone came over and started talking to you, that was really weird.
She did a selfie with me, like you're looking through the proofs, and you're like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, thank you for turning me into a tourist attraction in Barcelona.
You fit right in with the architecture and stuff. What did we then? Yeah, so we did.
So
We finished up the arms.
So we finished up the
And
arms.
we did the hands because
Yes.
I love doing them, and I've got so many photos of them because they just.
Yeah,
Yes.
you
That was
had
lovely.
when you did the sleeve, you had this little bit off the knuckle that just
Peeked
poked
out.
its way over the sleeve, and again, this is all like a process of what I could wrap my head around, because I wouldn't have thought of the idea of hands, but because I enjoyed this poking out, the idea you asked about hands, and I was like, yeah, I would like that, and so you built this beautiful like ruffle
Yeah.
that would poke out from a sleeve.
This is the part where we should mention your husband, because Chris has gone through more mental transformation with this than both you and I have,
Yeah.
and I owe Chris many an apology and many bunches of flowers and stuff like that, because I have tested that man's limits. I have no doubt. I'm very sorry, Chris. I'm not, because this.
And neither is he.
Yeah, that's the.
By the way,
Um,
he has loved this journey.
But every time I've had to break my boundaries with like, how am I going to make this creative piece of madness? And you've had to break a boundary of like, how is it going to look on me? Chris
Yes.
has had to break a boundary of, what is this doing to my husband?
Right. And I'm going to be looking at it, and am I going to like it? And am I going to get tired of it? And how are people going to perceive him? And is that going to change our life?
Yeah.
I think that is the process he goes through. And it did start with the chest tattoo, because he loves my chest. And he had said, so you're going to get a tattoo somewhere on your chest. I've told this story many times. And I was like, yes, dear, somewhere on my chest. And not telling him it was the whole chest, because I knew that would freak him out. And he came home because he was out of town that day. I was laying in bed. I had the sheet over, and he just came and he pulled back the sheet. He looked at it and he said, oh, I was afraid it was going to obscure your beautiful chest, but I see that it's enhancing it, so I'm okay. And he put the sheet back on. And that's how we got through that.
One of the better compliments I've been given.
Yeah.
Right, then what then we did your sides, these.
Yes! That was in Scotland.
Yeah, so by then, so first I left Copenhagen. I stopped working in New York because I started realizing that I'm actually autistic as fuck and I really don't like crowds and noise, and New York was not the right place for me. And I was going through all of that, not officially, in my subconscious, and ended up living in the middle of nowhere, Spain. And then we abandoned Spain and went touring around Europe, including Scotland. And you then came and visited us in Donach, or Dornoch, or however you want to pronounce it. Anyways, fucking far away up Scotland. And we started building on your waistline and building part of that. I'm still, one, fucking proud of it. Two, I feel like I'm like the source material for that flow on male clients now, because I see it on others. I mean, I've used it on other clients as well, but I see other tattoo artists use that flow on male clients. So I'm gonna be very arrogant and be like, I came up with that. That's not true. Other people must have used that for something, but this boldness and blackness in that shape.
This beautiful band that it hits the, what would be love handles. Even if you don't, listen, I have all kinds of, oddities and imperfections in my body, but it's not even fat. It's just the way the muscles hang. And the bands cut across it in a way that they take something that would be a liability and they make it into, it's not, it's a perk. And it was so gorgeous, and it ties together with the swirl on the back. And you had that beautiful sort of Tibetan blackwork piece. But at the same time, I was like, there's this gap up here. We could do one of these little things to fill this little gap. Like I thought there's a spot. I said, or we could do some sort of V. And you were like, oh, I like that idea. But that also diverted us a little bit away from what we were doing, because that took up like half a day. Or
a lot of skin.
It was a lot of skin. But that brought the whole like chest armor piece together in a way.
Yeah, the expansion on it made it feel more real with the rest of everything that was going on.
It tied it together beautifully. I was so happy that things really came together. And I still had in the back of my mind, like, I'd really like to go back though and fill the back out more fully to the lats. And you're like, yes, but you're getting a little top heavy. So I think you ought to consider doing work on your legs.
Yeah. And then COVID happened.
And then COVID, we planned a 2-week visit because it's a big canvas, legs, and so excited about that. And 2 weeks before the trip, COVID shut down the world. Yeah. And you were in Great Britain of all places. And of course the world is falling apart, possible Armageddon. And I'm like, what about my tattoo trip? That's all I could think of. So yeah, we had to just sit and think about that. But you did that beautiful render.
Yeah, out of almost pure like creative desperation, ended up drawing that piece that we've quite stuck to. We'll shove it into the video because it's cool.
Yes. So beautiful.
That both, it looked good, it made you very happy, it made our audience on social media very happy to see something like that in time lapse. It was fucking fun to do.
Yes, it was amazing seeing.
And then we had a direction to work with.
Yes.
For a very long time. And then, a lot of, we chatted every once in a while online and checked in, and how are you doing, and how's New York in COVID days, and all of this shit.
Yeah.
And then finally, shit changed.
Yeah.
And you had a calendar gap finally.
Yeah, at first your calendar began to be alive, that you could take clients, and I think that was when I was doing Tokyo Vice season 1, I think. I just remember that when you were able to finally take clients, I was in the middle of a show.
Yeah.
And you were like, I was like, I can't come right now. And you're like, oh, that's a shame. And we'll have to adorn you another time. And then you went, your schedule moved. And then, yes, I finally had a gap where I could schedule the trip. And that was here. That was Whitley Bay. And now we're actually, this is going to seem odd, but that was just May last year.
Yeah, I was just thinking that's insane, because I thought I actually started your legs a little bit before that, but we have hammered through legs and
Yeah.
buttocks and
Yeah.
back bits, and within
There was 9 days of inking over 2 weeks.
with 2 to 2 artists from time to time.
For 2
we had
artists?
Kaya help out
Yeah.
loads.
Oh yeah.
And we've had Matt help out.
And then that was those 9 days in May. Then 5 more days with Matt finishing. That was in October of last year. And I amazed people. I was like, everything below the waist was over the course of last year at that point. And we did the crotch piece in that 2-week phase. Wednesday, crotch day.
That was intense.
Very
For everyone.
I felt so vulnerable. I was like, guys, I have one request. I don't really tell you what music to play, but I can't take any heavy metal. I can't take any grindy, gritty, angstful stuff while we're working on this. It doesn't have to be Enya. I'm not saying people have to be put to sleep.
That would have been really weird and awkward. Tattooing someone's genitals while listening to Enya. Wow.
La, 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 la. Yeah, so no. And so you did that. And the music was nice. And I had to breathe. And then Kaya was pounding white ink as to reinforce the white that we had put in on an earlier visit. But it was a thicker needle, I remember, because the ink was heavier. And then I
used the thick white.
Yeah. And so that I could direct my attention to which pain was less. Sometimes this was more in the sensitive area, but this was so vulnerable. And
it was more emotional pain in the groin area.
It
than
was
physical, if I remember correctly.
At one point, my tears were streaming down my cheeks, and you were like, "Are you all right?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. It's not pain. It's just it was emotional, big emotions that came up working on this power center."
Literally.
Yeah, and the shaft, mind you, that was painful.
That was true pain.
You're like, so for the filling in, do you want to take the brave approach or do you want me to sedate it? And then you're like, well, or the foolhardy brave approach. And I'm like, thank you for rephrasing that because otherwise it would have felt like a challenge. I was like, please sedate it. And then you did wrap me up. We had lunch.
Yeah.
And then we came back after it taken place and you started with that and I went, oh, this is great. No wonder people like numbing cream. But then we moved over to the crotch filling in and that was just what it was. And and this was 5 hours.
I remember Chris being worried about that bit as well.
Of course. Well, I have to, to his credit, he had a right to be concerned.
Of course.
What we were doing to that part of my...
There's lots of little bits on your bodysuit in general, where like the spiral here, for example, and the little mandalas we fitted in.
Yes.
I love, and the big
and
mandalic shape on the inner thigh, or inner knee.
Yes.
Is one of my absolute favorites.
Yes. Yeah, I like these half mandalas.
Yeah.
And on the outside of the knees as well.
Elbows,
I mean.
the arm knees. The other knees.
The other knees. Yeah, we have between that first mandala and these 4 mandalas and the other 2 half mandalas. And now we added 1 more mandala.
Yeah, and the mandalas from your armpits have then, and your back.
Yeah.
So when I did that on your back, that then helped dictate how we would do these.
Yes, in the
and
inside.
they then helped dictate how I did the floral bands here.
Ooh.
And
Yes,
how
the
these
fleur-de-lis.
patterns have played out.
Yes.
Because it all had to tie in together. And the original spirally tribal work and the spirals from the tree is what helped dictate all the floral, plant-like shapes that I've made since then. So thanks Gunny for deciding how that came
Amazing.
out. And then the hard, long lines and the massivity of certain elements. And over here, this cutting across the musculature. Thank you, Gerhard. I'm blaming you for my even knowing how to do that. That was fucking brilliant. The same here, where it just cuffs off. Which I don't think I would have ever done that if it weren't for the fact that Gerhard is such a fucking inspiration.
No, I love the way the inner and outer sleeves that goes completely around. Like it's not that was a band that I had that we built around. It was quite the opposite. You had just designed it in the outer, and then the inner came later. And I love the way this mandala
Explodes.
Like the
almost.
Big Bang, it just explodes across the arm. And the way these lines follow the bicep, the inside of the bicep, they sort of accentuate that look. It's a great.
Also, one of my favorite bits is the big spirals on the side of your,
Yes.
your butt. It's
Mhm.
just like floral.
And they're centered around the
like
dimples
ferns.
in the butt cheeks.
Yep. That was really good. And then, okay, so legs, and then we came to now.
Yeah.
These sessions,
Yes.
which has been 6 days of, I wrote down a to-do list, which was like hands,
Yes.
feet,
Yes.
inner thighs,
Yes.
lats. Is it lats? Are they
It
called
was
lats?
yes. It
Yeah.
was filling it out, the back, going back to fill out the back, but then the upper legs,
Upper butt.
upper butt. And so we were connecting everything back there. It was like a tour of all my most sensitive
To the force of pain.
pain. It was so many different qualities of pain.
And your head.
And my head, which is a truly unique.
So just everything stupid we could fit into one set of sessions. And you had your feet tattooed at the same time as you had your hands tattooed.
Yes.
Because Matt was working on your toes.
Yes.
We even had a session, 5 minutes, where I had to hold your foot still while Matt was tattooing.
Finishing the feet. That theory that I had developed during crotch day with the shoulder about, if two artists are working at the same time, you could just direct to whichever one hurts less. That went out the window. My brain went, fuck that. They both hurt a lot.
It only works occasionally.
And so you're just going to experience both. But it made the hands not seem as bad because my feet are twitchy in real life. Anyway, when nothing is going on, they just twitch. They move around while you're tattooing me in other areas. They'll twitch. The idea of tattooing my toes and trying not to twitch, Matt had to keep jumping back, like, and be like, sorry.
Yeah.
Because he was afraid that I was ruining it. And he was like, that's all right. He had quick reflexes.
Nothing has been ruined.
And then, yes, you had to hold
And
it
we
down.
managed to make a tie-in from left foot to right hand.
That's right.
Which I really loved
I
doing.
love that.
And on your left hand, I made, this was one of my favorite things to do, like the hard lines on one side of the finger and then the floral work on the other side.
Yeah. Yes.
To basically tie in the whole idea from your body so that when you look at your hand, you've got everything epitomized into your hand.
Yeah.
Piece. That was fun.
Yeah.
It made me very happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a very, very, very busy 6 days. And
It
then
has.
today we did your head without you telling your husband.
Well, because I had learned that whole thing of him adapting takes time. And then I felt bad about it because he has been so supportive on the tattoo journey. And I'm like, and he's actually actively letting me share with him what I'm going through each day, sending him pictures. And he was really
He's become a
supportive.
big fan of your tattoos as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
The
he-
stories you tell about when you meet people that ask about your tattoos
Yeah.
and like watching the videos and all these
Yeah.
things. It's very positive.
Yeah, and he's become such a big support, but I knew that the tattoo in the head was going to be a thing because I was pushing a boundary for myself as well. But I sort of thought, well, it'd be better if I tell him now that this is what I'm planning, he's just going to be filled with angst about it. Then all week I've been starting to chide myself because there was a point when he asked about what we would be working on. I could have told him and I didn't. I'm like, damn it, Brad, you didn't trust, that he would be with you. And it came all the way to today, midway through doing it, before I was like, hey, how are you doing? And he's like, where did you say you put that special drain cleaner for the bathroom thing? I'm like, that should be under the sink. And anyway, so I just wanted to tell you what we're doing. And I was like, so this is our last day. And I'm adding a mandala to the back of my head. And he was like, oh? Well, I mean, so there's the neck tattoo, and so the mandala is formed on top of that. But yes, it'll be under the hairline. I mean, the haircut that I had when I left is sort of
the hairline that this is built into. I just want to tell you about it because I think I was kind of operating from an old way of dealing with things where I just didn't like want you to worry about things too much in advance. I know, but I already have a tattoo above the neck.
And I felt so bad, but then as that conversation progressed, I was like, all right, this is as hard for him to.
Yeah.
You
But
know.
I think it was really good that you did it and had that chat.
I had to.
But your head's been, it's been a journey to do because it was the last thing we were going to do in the week.
Yes.
I was really excited about it, but I was also, I voiced my worries many times because I was really nervous that because you gave me a canvas. Like,
Yes.
This is what's available.
Yeah.
And that area is also the area that, well, one, I've worked on it for myself. Like I'm planning my own headpiece,
Right.
and I keep thinking like, I don't want it to look like that fucking wreath of a Roman emperor kind of thing. So I'm fucking back and forth with like, how do I do this?
How do you
I
balance
make it
it?
look good?
Yeah.
And honestly, one of the things that makes it work is the part that I didn't illustrate for you, which is like the little mandalic floral thing around your ear, because it breaks it up and ties it more into you. The fact that it like sneaks in and ties it to your ears.
Yes. So there's less of a wreath.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy.
Me too.
With the result.
Well, when you had done that beautiful tattoo up the back, it felt like it was a pedestal that should be supporting something bigger. And that's what it's always been for me, this sort of what needs to be completed next. And it felt incomplete. And today we were completing the build of that.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the insane part, that it's the completion, and the completion in principle also means the finish line.
Right.
Of having done what we set out to do.
Yeah.
There is, to the viewers, there is of course a bit of skin on your stomach, but it's personally something that I think looks epic. It's powerful that we left that to. It's a segmentation, but since your stomach and your rib muscles and everything, I don't know what they're called in English. Fuck it. It looks so fucking good that for now that has not ever been something we planned to tattoo.
Yeah. Plus, it occurred to me today that it reminds me of C-3PO.
Yes.
Star Wars.
Fucking fun Star Wars callback. You are by no means someone that, like, personality-wise, I could never draw parallel myself between you and C-3PO. Maybe, you're knowledgeable. That was
Yes,
the
master.
only thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it finishes our project, which is so insane. And I've been really dreading it. Like, it's been a very melancholic thing to be facing, because I've been working on quite a few bodysuits, but this is the first one that is at a full completion.
In terms of what the tattoo means for me, even at the beginning when I was doing that search for sacred tattoo, I always had it in my own vision that it would be sacred armor, that somehow this ink would protect me spiritually. And the idea that Peter works with the canvas of the musculature, it's like a painting on a sculpture. He works with the context of the canvas. So it really did begin to feel like we were creating pieces of armor, especially when we did this chest piece. It was just such a, working with the chest and everything. And so that everything we've done has had this feeling, in a very modern, abstract way, of armor conforming to the body, every little nook and cranny.
When you got here this time, I mentioned fairly early on that I would like to have a talk about finality, and I have no idea where this conversation is going to go. Because it's quite a difficult subject, and I don't think it's something that people really touch upon, tattoo artists really touch upon, or even clients, because It's a dangerous subject. It's touchy, and it's weird. And to me, it's quite a relevant subject because I work so closely with my clients on big projects. And then recently, I had an event that really it shook me up quite a lot. The reason I want to talk to you about it is because you're a mature adult who have gone through a lot of shit in your life, a lot of great things too. And this was the final bit. This is the finality of our project together. This is the end of one massive, massive journey. 9 years, 8-9 years we've been doing this, and God, I mean the amount of hours that we've spent in each other's company, stabbing you with needles. I can't even count them. And looking forward to your visit and looking forward to your company. In doing that, I also had to come to terms with the fact that that is the end of this. Like we're gonna have to reconfigure our relationship to each other. Because I mean, the first few times I tattooed you, it was like we got to know each other and started building up like a familiarity, and then we became friends at some point. But it's always been a friendship that's been very focused around the fact that we had to meet up to tattoo.
Right.
And that's done now.
I know. Preordained meeting points.
Yeah, it had to happen. But at the same time, throughout this journey, I mean, you've been tattooed by me in 4 countries.
Yes.
We've been far and wide, and that's done now.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
Yeah, very strange.
Right? And then, like, knowing that this is the end, I knew that we would have to have some weird conversation about what are we doing, like, which we've had.
Yes.
We've made some plans. We're going to do some holidaying.
Yes.
With and without kids, and just because I really want to hang out with Chris.
Yeah.
I mean, I know so much about you, Chris.
I know.
I know so much about you, man. And we've never gotten to hang out, and it's weird. And you know my wife, you know my kids.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck's sake, you were the first non-family member that held Bram.
Yes.
It's a long and epic journey. And then at the same time, not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, I learned that a friend of mine, originally a client, but then a friend, Michael, often referred to as the Titan, because he was a massive man that looked like The Rock. He passed away. And so it's been a thing that I've been thinking about a lot over the years, not constantly, just every once in a while. Like, eventually I will lose one of my canvases. And that was both in the way of like, I'll be done with tattooing them, but maybe they'll pass away. Especially because I do tattoo quite a few people who are my seniors. You were a great example. So there's been this thought in my head, sometimes a fear, like what happens when a client passes away? I was mortified when I learned of Michael's death because he was just such an amazing human being. He was fit as fuck, and only a few years older than me. I think he made it to 45, and he had a double aneurysm, I think it's called in English, and ended up in a coma. I've filmed myself talking about this a few times, and it's when filming myself, it's weird. It feels detached, and at the same time, it's really difficult. So filming it with you, I was hoping it would make me either more at ease about it, or it would feel more natural. I don't know what it is. Anyways, he ended up, I think, 40 days in the hospital in a coma. Or 4 months, something with 4. And then his body gave up, and he passed away. He passed away in December, and I didn't hear about it until very recently. And I came to work after having learned about this, and it felt really weird. All sorts of thoughts about this mortality. My mortality, who's we were almost the same age and all these things, and other clients' mortality and the idea of losing my art. I've always thought about this. Like, my art is so temporary because it will go to its grave eventually. And I've loved the beauty of this. I've talked about it on social media a long time ago. And then I haven't touched on it for a very long time. But it's always been a beauty to me that I create something that should probably be on a wall, so it could be inherited and all these things, but it isn't. It's on living canvas, living art.
Yeah.
And then it'll be done.
Yeah.
And I like that. But I don't like that it'll be done at the same time, because that means someone is lost and gone. Which, I don't know, it's a very weird thing. And then Diana wrote me and told me that, I think you should know that his mother decided that in his coffin he would just be wearing his underwear to show off your work, because it was such a big part of him. And that made me cry a lot at the time. I'm incredibly flattered of this, and knowing now that it had such an impact on his life, my decorations of him, it made me very, very proud. In this sadness, I almost felt guilty about being proud about something that had to do with someone else's death and passing. And then I had your sessions coming up, Brad. And I started, when you got here, I talked to you about it, because we've had a long journey, and it's ended in its own way. So it was all a lot. It's been such a weird culmination of endings, and as I said, I've tried to film myself talking about this, and it felt very weird just talking to a phone about it. And yeah, now we're here, and I mean, it might be that I'm the one that passes first. Who the fuck knows? I often do dumb things.
God, I hope not.
But it just made it very, very present that my art is only temporary. And we just filmed another video where I thanked your husband for letting me decorate you in this way, because he's found it very difficult. But also, I'd like to thank you for letting me decorate this vessel that you're going through life in. It is an honor, and it has been a pleasure, this whole journey. You have let me grow creatively so much, and I'm very flattered to have gotten to be the one to cover your canvas in my weird scribbles, and gotten to put you through so much fucking pain. You've taken so much punishment from my hand and Matt's hands and Kaya's and so on, but we've made it this far. So thank you for putting up with me.
Well, I always tell people when they comment about the art, because they've never seen anything like it, and they certainly haven't seen a bodysuit. And I talk about being a Peter Madsen canvas, and how honored I am to be that canvas, and that this has been such an extraordinary journey. That I love your art so much that I've just had complete trust in every step of the way. I mean, I've given my input or preferences or concerns, but by and large, I always knew that the best thing was just to, all right, here's the area we're doing next, and then just show up and be there and let you do your thing, because it's always been such a beautiful, impressive thing to experience. You may do some pre-designs first, but by and large, it doesn't become real until you start drawing it onto the three-dimensional canvas. And that's been such a pleasure to watch. It's amazing showing up for several days of tattooing and to not really know exactly what we're going to do. I mean, we know the areas that we hope to cover, and then of course we've set these outlandish goals to do. And every time I'm like, I will try to not kill us all to make these goals. And invariably, some things take longer than we thought, but you always power through. What I watched you do yesterday. Well,
we almost always made it.
Yeah. No, I don't think we've ever like stopped seriously short of a goal. We at some point been like, all right, that's as far. Like the last trip when there was these panels on the inner thighs, and you're like, we finished doing what we did, outlining the lower part, and then it was just like, we're not going to get to that this trip. We were both just so exhausted, and it was painful. And I'm like, yep, good move. But you mean the art that you create is temporary because it's engraved on a living human being, and we are all temporary. And I'm of two minds about that. One is sort of in the Burning Man philosophy, where you create all this beautiful art, including the man, and then you burn it. It's like the creativity happens, that whole city gets created, and then it disappears without a trace. And that's part of the process of creation and destruction and letting go, and that just makes room for more creation. And then in my own personal world, I mean, I've survived a lot of life-threatening things. I mean, I got HIV in the 80s when there was no treatment and no treatment in sight, and I lived long enough for the better meds and became undetectable and went into adulthood, and to the point where my doctor said, you're just as likely to die of normal stuff like everybody else. And then I had a bit of a scare in this past couple of years where we were observing some prostate cancer. And I knew like it was going to be serious to even talk about it with you. Because it's upsetting when people hear that you're going through those things. But then we did this treatment, this focal ablation that isolated the spot and treated the spot, and it didn't involve radiation or chemotherapy or anything that would weaken my body in any way, because of course I definitely had my eye on the prize of this session. Not that I would die, because
I'd fucking die. I missed my session.
but just the idea that I did have that thought, like you have to preserve the canvas as best you can. And it was kind of like, oh my God, what if something happened and I died before we got to complete this journey? Like, my mind goes to all kinds of dark places.
Yeah.
And I just think of all the what ifs. I mean, I was worried about any number of things. Like Hurricane Lee could make it so I can't get across the pond and do this. I mean, it just, it was so important for me to have this completion and the satisfaction, because we've been on this journey and it was so challenging, so gratifying, but it was a very important goal to reach this point. And now I'm like, all right, and we'll document it and take lots of pictures, but I have to be at home with the fact that yes, this art only exists on me, and if I go away, then so does the art. But in the meantime, while I'm here, I can display it proudly to as many people as I can so that they can enjoy it and appreciate it, and so that their world can expand by experiencing your art as it has expanded my world.
I think that's one of the nicest things I've ever been told. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that sums it up. What a fucking insane journey this has been.
I know.
So here we are at the end of this journey, and honestly, I'm still wrapping my head around that, because every time I've finished, it's always been this mad dash to get to what we plan to do on this visit, but I've always had the areas in my mind that I wanted to do more with, and we knew going into this, it was 6 days, 6 final crunch our way through it days, and it would be the end. But now it's the next day after we finished, and part of me is I'm jubilant and ecstatic. Of course, I'm physically sore, so that moderates the jubilancy just a little bit, but I know I'll heal. But yeah, that part of me, when we finished yesterday, we did that countdown and that was it. And I was like, really? No more? So, I don't know. I think I'm going to be processing the answer to that question for a while, because there's always been more on this whole journey. But I do feel incredibly gratified, because every single time Peter's created art on me that's better than I could have ever imagined. So I'm just extremely grateful.